Hello and welcome to another elevating moment with books and writers on this edition of Book Splash on Splash FM 105.5 Ibadan. I am Michael Olatunbosun. Today, let's look the way of poetry as we examine the work October Blues, a collection of poems written by Obiageli Iloakasia and published in 2021 by Libretto. The poet, Obiageli, is a storyteller, literary critic and freelance editor. Her art captures contemporary issues in Africa and beyond, and she explores them in diverse aesthetic forms. Obiageli's works have appeared in several blogs and online platforms. She has previously published a short story book titled Twitter Street. In this collection, there are 121 poems spread across 4 thematic sections. The poet opens the collection with a poem titled Independence Day Anniversary. In this poem, the poet paints a picture of a nation that has not come to terms with itself, and its people are referred to as ones who do not have an idea of where they are headed. In this poem, the country whose independence is celebrated on 1st October still lacks definition and has perpetually defied one. It's a country that wanders thoughtlessly in the cold. The narrative about a nation without compass continues with the opening set of poems in this first section of the collection. Basically written in October 2020, the poems in this section deal with the 60th Independence Day of Nigeria. The poet persona is still on the imagery of thoughtless adventure of the nation. The poet persona here muses about the state of motionlessness predicated upon a shaky foundation and a people who are incapable of redirecting their nation. In the poem, The Beginning of Death, the poet laments the abduction and murder of her brother and promises that she will get justice for him someday. Afterwards, and in a number of verses in this collection, we see the poet persona in the crossfire and siege of carnage which the beastly leadership of the nation has heaped on the people. In some cases, we read about the plunder visited on homes and villages of the innocent who are goaded into a war about which they know nothing. In this collection, the poet writes verses in protest against state-sponsored brutality, violence and abuses meted out against the people by agents of state described as savage inbreeds who ripped life out of us in a land that is so full of grief and death consumes the young and old. For the poet, the most unacceptable matter about this orgy of blood is that the state has feigned ignorance of the demands of the young ones. Hear the poet here, quote, "Even till now, the authorities have not asked what our demands are. They have not looked our way. We stay awake all day crying out for an end to the brutalities we face. At night when we should rest, we stay up for the hope morning brings." But the poet concludes with the assurance that the protest will continue. Hear the poet, "When morning comes, we will count ourselves alive, and for our lost brothers, we will continue this revolution." You're still listening to Book Splash on Splash FM, and I'm still discussing the book October Blues, a collection of poems written by Obiageli Iloakasia. In this collection, the poet employs the shadow as a metaphor for faceless agents of death, a band of bandits and marauders who empty people's homes and leave dust and death behind. These shadow men are perpetually in the mix when news of death and inferno are mentioned. The poet persona blames these shadows for swallowing and slaying young innocent people for no just cause. The poet assures the reader that justice will be served in its time, and then there would be closure and healing. And a recurring mantra of the poet in this work is that those who will fight to invoke justice, freedom, and closure in this land are the youth. In this work, the poet persona sings a dirge about a country in descent. She sees a country that takes delight in the slaughter of its own, a land where virtues are vices and vices are virtues. In this song, the poet persona avers, and I quote now, "People looted and were called heroes. Miscreants walked fearlessly as gods on the street. Hoodlums became armored knights, and vandals were our torchlights at night." End of quote. For the poet, it is unfortunate that the victim is made to apologize for crime committed against him and made to pay for the oppression of the oppressor. In the second section of the collection, the poet presents verses that are predicated on the wordings of the first national anthem. In what appears to be a face-to-face dialogue with our nation, the poet employs the old Nigerian anthem to interrogate the present-day Nigeria. The second part of this section of the collection also features Nigeria's current national anthem. Here the poet quips about the state of the nation in the face of the clarion call that heralds the anthem. For instance, the poet cautions her compatriots in this one titled "Compatriots Call This Way." Arise, O compatriots, before you rise, make sure they have no guns. A true compatriot should serve, but how can you serve a nation where service is a death sentence? Oh compatriots, fight for our nation's cause. But before the fight begins, make sure your hands are loaded with real weapons. End of quote. But soon after, the poet admonishes her compatriots not to answer the call to loot, but to serve, to choose the path where peace and unity are traits of the new Nigeria. You are listening to Book Splash on Splash FM, and I'm still discussing the work October Blues, a collection of poems written by Obiageli Iloakasia. The third section of the work is a collection of dirges. The poems in this section are dedicated to fellow citizens, brothers and sisters who died as victims of a failed system. They include Tina Ezekwe, Ayomide Taiwo, Tiamiyu Kazim, Ifeoma Abugu, Rinja Bala, Kolade Johnson, among others. Section 4 is a collection of the poet's musings about intricate feelings and realities, unanswered questions, and other things. In one of the poems, The New Guard, the poet takes a dig at those who block us on the road in their black attire and compel us to show them love. These people in black, the poet persona says, extort road users by squeezing out 50 naira from our pockets. In The Nation Builder, the poet chronicles the life of a thief and the trajectory of thievery from little stealing to becoming a leading thief and then on to stealing a nation. The poet writes here, and I quote now, "The fourth time I stole a whole country and sought for where to hide it. In the end, I dumped it in my slack pocket." End of quote. The poet also writes a lamentation about the lifeless bodies of the Agatu and Naka people of Benue from whom blood gushes and whose land is now a pool of blood. The poet persona here strongly advocates for strong voices to come out to put an end to these killings meted out to a helpless people who have the best of foods but die in abject poverty. In this collection, October Blues, Obiageli writes about the Chibok girls' abduction of 2014. In the poem titled Chibok 2014, the poet writes about the chaos that engulfed the land as her sisters run for their lives. The poet laments the now empty streets of a city which has lost its substance because ancient walls swallowed them. The poet also plays on the imagery of emptiness as encapsulated in the president's recycled manifesto in the poem Commonwealth. The poet muses, and I quote, "On this anniversary, the president will read his manifesto again with the reaffirming words that changed nothing in the last 4 years. His manifesto is a mockery of how our rights are being used against us. On this anniversary, we are reminded again that our votes never count." In this collection, the poet persona suggests that government basically only exists for those in government, while the people are just props for those in power to get there. So the poet persona calls for a return of power to the people. The rest of the collection's fourth section is dedicated to the poet's random interrogation of the propensity of the government to promise peace and at the same time start a war, particularly against its youth. The poet wonders why the government essentially promises freedom and abundance while it takes delight in creating chaos. Ultimately, this collection is a clear manifestation of a poet's anger, pain, and battle with a nation that she is equally passionately hopeful about. The poet's patriotic voice is perpetually loud, reverberating across the work, even as she continually questions the moral and governance integrity of those in power. You're listening to Book Splash on Splash FM, and it's time to meet my guest, the author of this collection. In this conversation, Obiageli Iloakasia talks about her motives for writing the collection, October Blues, and challenges us all to do our part in making this nation great again. Obiageli, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much.
Why did you write this work, of poetry?
Like everyone that sets up to write, I think you always feel like you have a story to share with the world. No one sets up to write without the message, regardless of what the message is, whether good, bad, credible or not. You must have a message to share. And I felt like the event from October 2020 is so significant and something I would want to share my thoughts on. Actually, on the 1st of October 2020, I had made a tweet on my Medium page and somehow people were sharing and retweeting it. I think the title is "Fuck the Nigerian Dream" or something. So along the line, somehow that night, I wrote a poem and the next day, and somehow the whole fight to enter started to grow. So I decided, okay, you know what, let's do this as a journal. Then along the line, I figured that, we have 31 days already, and we have poems for each 31 days. So we started to work with the publisher.
First of all, I'm looking at the first poem written 1st October 2020, right? Independence Day anniversary. This was when Nigeria turned 60. You said, today, we are 60 years old, still we wander thoughtlessly in the cold. So for you, you have an imagery of movement without a compass, and you made reference to it almost everywhere in this work. So you think that this is a country, Nigeria, that doesn't have a definition of where it wants to go?
So basically what I was trying to say is, before October 2020, we had started to see videos online about all the things that were happening, and almost everyone is tired of the corruption, the bad leadership in Nigeria. It's like we don't even know where we're headed as a country. So many people are, it's time to jack out because really there's nothing for me here. So it's like there's no direction for most Nigerians. Some young Nigerians will tell you, I have to go to school and find my way out of this country. Some people will tell you, the best way to survive in this country is to get involved in one or two illegalities. Basically, you can hear or you can feel that there's really no hope. So it's like, we don't even know where we're going to. And that's why I went ahead to say, okay, we wander thoughtlessly in the cold. It's a situation where you don't even know what you're doing. No one really understands anymore. So I guess that's how this came about.
That October 2020 has been described as a landmark in the history of Nigeria, particularly the attitude of those who are in government to young people in this country. So I look at most of what you have here is bloodshed, death. There are some people you described as shadow men. Basically, you are trying to tell us about the unknown gunmen or the people who shot at peaceful protesters on the 20th of October 2020. Give me a sense of what you think generally about that NSAS protest of 2020, particularly leading to the 20th of October.
Let me start by saying that the poem Black Tuesday, 20th of October 2020, was written on that particular day, the night of that day. Somehow I was in my office before I came down and I joined the protest. We saw people walk by, so I felt like, okay, this thing was getting serious. This was getting realer. And most Nigerians did not think, especially older Nigerians, like I was telling a friend, that you know what's going to happen in this election? Forget all these things we're talking about right now. If you want the best for this country, you might have to hide your parents' voters' card. Because the most older Nigerians are more or less party loyalists. I met a core member that came to our office to ask us to help her do something. And we just engaged her somehow. We said, okay, who are you voting this year? She said she doesn't know, but whoever is in APC. I said, what do you mean? Do you mean she's from the West? I can't remember exactly where she's from. She said, yeah, she has the mind of voting Peter Obi because everyone is talking about Peter Obi and everyone is talking about a better Nigeria. But she feels like because her dad is an APC supporter, her dad is going to compel all of them to vote APC. In my most recent book, Can't Believe, there's a poem titled Scarlet, and I made it clear in that particular poem that a real revolution doesn't end as peace. So before then, when people started to talk about the NSAS, videos started to surface online. I had spoken to a couple of people that actually confirmed to me that, okay, their brother or their family member, because books like this need a lot of research. You can't just put out like this. Yes, I had read it. So videos were coming out online, but so many other Nigerians were saying, okay, this is a lie. These are lies. Nothing is happening. No one shot. Even down till that night, people were still saying, oh, no one shot, actually. So either it was going this way or it was going that way. And that's why this book was deliberately written as poetry. I could have decided to use any other genre to write this book, but I decided to use poetry because really no one can question me here. It's my choice. I choose how to write it. I choose how to document the collection, especially that we try not to even use names that can say, okay, this is who we're talking about. And that's why you mentioned the shadow men. However, the shadow men, when you, the reader, read, you decide who it is. So the whole NSAS process, I feel like, formed a reawakening in Nigeria. Even what we're seeing today, I think it's as a result of that NSAS process. Some older people or some people generally would say, okay, what did you guys gain out of the NSAS process? I think it woke everyone up. It made us realize that in the end, this is going to affect you. So if it's affecting me today, it's going to affect you tomorrow. And if Nigeria is better, it's going to be better for everyone. It's going to be better for all our collective interests. And the whole NSAS process still has a lot of questions. And like I said, that's why I decided to put out this collection to mark these historical parts in our lives. It's so very triggering for people. That's for people that have lost their lives, down to people that do not even want to talk about it. People that are here today, people that will come tomorrow, whoever it is. Anyone that encounters the collection knows that, okay, from social time to social time, something like this happened. And that particular poem from Cynthia says, Black Tuesday. It's actually a recollection of that event from that particular film.
And in that poem, one of the stanzas here, you wrote here, I might die tomorrow, but if I do not, I will keep fighting. If I die the victim and not a hero. You wrote here, we cried out because we got tired of being killed. Rather than shield us, our should-be protectors found more reasons to kill us. The sense I get here is that those who should be protecting the people in this country, particularly young people, are the ones that are oppressing them. And you have a very strong cane for the oppressors. You said that justice will be served, but we do not know when justice will be served. How do we get to a juncture where we will get a closure to this matter and justice would have been served?
These are one of the very complex realities in life, especially in Nigeria, where people get away with just anything. Someone kills another, someone abducts another, and we keep trying and hearing the cases in court. And sometime during that same period where people died in the NSAS protest, a lot of people still say that there was no shooting. So we're going to be maintaining here that no one was shot or no one shot live bullets. But here's the thing. From the people that died, videos and pictures that surfaced online, people started to say, okay, they died for us. But the truth is, these people should never be called heroes, right? It's not like you let yourself out there to say, okay, I'm ready to die. The fact is that you are only speaking up for justice. Most of the people, some of the people that even died were the result of stray bullets. So how do you call these people heroes? This seems of a failed system. When I say I might die tomorrow, the truth is I might be working tomorrow and maybe some stray bullet is even going to land on me, who knows? Or someone is going to, maybe there's a race here, they're just going to pack everyone, and the end is no one will hear that I even ever existed. So that thing is there. Those lines say, I might die tomorrow, but if I don't die, I'll keep fighting for all of us. And that is what we're doing. Believing, having the hope that one day it's going to get better, coming out to say, okay, we're ready to have our PVCs to vote. Regardless of who it's for, as long as you're convinced now that it's the better Nigeria you want, go ahead and vote for whoever you've got in your PVCs to vote for.
My reading of this, your collection, tells me that on one hand, you are bitter against this country and the system. You described it as a failed system. And on the other hand, you are also hopeful that we can get things better and make this country better sometime in the future. And that leads me to the next stage, where it is your second section or so, where you were talking using the old national anthem, the new national anthem, and the national pledge as the basis for the lines that you have here. I can see a patriotic Nigerian in you. How do you still manage to remain optimistic and be patriotic?
When someone says what is home to you, some people say, okay, home is where the heart is. But the truth is, no matter how we see it, in the end, we are all Nigerians. And I'm someone that is very passionate about Nigeria. I'm someone that is very passionate about a system that works. Wherever I find myself, I say these things. So because this has happened, because we have watched the system fail us, because we've watched people die as a result of maybe carelessness, bad governance, doesn't mean that Nigeria is going to end. There's still hope for us, and we are the hope. As much as we are calling out bad governance, as much as we are calling out all the things we want to see change, all the changes we want to see, the truth is, in the end, I'm still Nigerian. Wherever my name is heard, okay, she's Nigerian. No matter where I run to, I'm still Nigerian. So if you want these things to work, it has to be collective. And I still have that belief that someday Nigeria is going to be better. I see it getting better already. I do see it getting better. So that's what it is.
Let's talk about you for a moment. The writing journey, how did it start for you?
I think most of the type of literature I write centers on social justice, change, speaking out, and all those type of things. So I figured that I'm someone that likes to talk about all these things wherever I find myself. I like to say, okay, let's stick by the truth and go with it. But it's not everything I can come somewhere and talk about. What do? I write them. And that's what's so special about poetry for me, because you get to express yourself just how you want, and you hope that somehow, somewhere, someone is going to read it and connect with you. So for me, my writing journey is I have that sweet message, or I have the spectacular message I want to share with the world. Mm-hmm. I don't hold back on these things. I just write them. Mm-hmm. And somehow we also heal by writing. You can tell that, okay, for many people that write, for writers, you feel like, okay, once you put down something, you're better. Even when your head is so full, or you feel like, okay, at this point, things are not going so well, once you just write those things to get some sort of relief. So it's also having the boldness to share these things with the world. You know, sometimes you have this mixed feelings. Okay, will people read my work when it comes out? These people are saying it is good. Is the world accepts it? What will it be like when these things are finally out? But regardless, when you have that push to do something, you just find yourself doing it.
Okay, so can you tell me those who influenced your writing and, helped you to find your voice?
As a young Nigerian, we read a lot of African literature, especially that I'm so crazy about African literature. I will give credit to Chimamanda Adichie because she's been doing so well. She's incredible, she's doing so well, and she's helping so many of us find our voices. Someone else I like is a Ugandan poet, Okoti Bissett. He's famous for songs of Lawino. I love the way he writes. And these are people that share the type of thoughts I share. So we're asking for justice, we're asking for change, we're asking for a better society. So I can also give credit to people like Chinua Achebe, people like Wole Soyinka. Even in music, you talk about people like Stella because they're doing so well in social justice. Social justice is something I'm very particular about, and that's why I use my voice to speak on those things. So there are so many other writers I enjoy, but for the type of writing I like, I think these people have done remarkably well in shaping my voice, or better, helping me express myself.
All right, so let's return to the book, October Blues, this collection of poems. There's this poem here, 117, Show of Hands. Let our votes count. Screamed the man who has never driven a car. No one heard his voice. Men like him mean nothing in the society and contribute nothing significant either. On every election day, we are faced with the same drama. You were making reference to, the elections and the rest of it earlier. Is this election going to be any different?
I think even the blind would say yes, judging by the progress so far that the country is making. You can see the number of people that come out to show solidarity, or come out in solidarity to the person or whoever they are rooting for. So what this hand was significantly placed in this particular collection is, every time I tell people, okay, you have to vote this year, they'll tell you something like, why do I have to vote when our votes never count? So this is like a reawakening. Whatever it is, whether you think your votes don't count. And I always tell people, if you say your votes don't count, why do people bribe you to give your votes to them?
You think that ballot boxes will not be abducted again this time around?
If someone like you and someone like me comes out with the type of sensitization that is going on, to a great extent, I think it's going to be different from what we used to see and what we used to hear.
I'd like you to tell me, finally, your key message or key theme in this book.
My key message should be that of hope and courage. And most importantly, one of the things I always tell people is, when you have to speak up, speak up. When you see things going badly and you have the opportunity to speak up, never keep quiet. Because from speaking up, your voice might inspire somebody else and it triggers change. It makes that self-examining yourself. Okay, am I contributing a fair share to the growth and development of this country? Is this the Nigeria that I want my children to experience? So it's just like a wake-up call One is the wake-up call. We are bringing out these stories so people can read and know that, okay, these are really our experiences. And are these experiences good? Definitely not. So aside bringing out, projecting these experiences, we're also saying that there is hope. We're hopeful that someday Nigeria is going to get better. And I think to an extent, that was what I've been able to capture in that collection.
All right. So Obiageli Iloakasia, thank you very much for speaking with me.
Thank you so much, Michael. I'm so grateful for this opportunity.
That was my conversation with Obiageli Iloakasia, the poet behind the work October Blues. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, then let's meet again next Saturday on Book Splash on Splash FM 105.5 Ibadan. In case you have a comment, please send me a text message 0805 699 8676 or email